In this video, I will show you how I hardwired a dashcam in a 2016 Toyota RAV4 without removing the airbag cover on the A-pillar. This approach will work on just about any vehicle with an overhead console that has lighting or controls for a power sunroof. Most commonly, dashcams are hardwired by running a wire up the A-pillar, but with this approach, extra care is needed to avoid cosmetic damage to the cover, or worse, damage or blockage of the sensitive airbag tucked into the pillar. I think a much easier approach is to use the power available in the overhead console instead. In my case, I'll be using the power used by the sunroof connector, which should have plenty of capacity for a dashcam. It's a good idea to disconnect the battery, or at least the relevant circuits in the fuse box, before messing with the vehicle's wiring. My overhead console is secured with 4 clips. Note that some cars will also have bolts in the sunglass holder area. I'm going to use a plastic putty knife to pry it off without damaging the surrounding headliner. The overhead console is left dangling on a connector, which I'm going to disconnect. I'm actually going to use the power from the other connector, which is used for the sunroof motor. Here is the pinout, which I confirmed with a multimeter. Since I prefer to have the dashcam powered on and off with the car, I'm going to tap into the black wire. For dashcams with an always-on Sentry mode, you can use the constantly powered blue wire, or whatever wire that happens to be on your vehicle. Use a multimeter to test if you have a different car model, or find the pinout information online if you don't have a way to test. I marked a third wire as the ground connection, but instead of using it, I will ground my camera directly to the chassis. More on that later. But first, I'm going to prep power wiring. My dashcam included a 12V to 5V converter that's meant to plug into the car's auxiliary power outlet, and I will modify it for easy connection to the car's wiring. Here, most people will just choose to buy a separate cable, made for hardwiring dashcams. These are especially useful for setups that will be always powered, as they can be set to turn off power once the battery voltage falls below a threshold, to avoid discharging the battery too far. While I elected to solder positive and ground wires to my adapter, it's also possible to just buy one of these female sockets to plug the provided adapter right in. I'm also going to add a fuse in series just in case. This isn't strictly necessary as the circuit is already fused, but I had one of these automotive fuse holders on hand. I'll plug a 5A fuse once I'm back in the car. Back in the car, I'm going to cut and strip the 12V wire I identified before. Wire tap kits that allow tapping into various gauges of wire without cutting them are available for this purpose. However, I'm going to just cut the wire and use one of these 3-terminal Wago electrical connectors I have on hand. Here I'm inserting the 5A fuse into my fuse holder. For the connection to ground, and to avoid cutting another wire in the connector bundle, I decided to connect my ground wire to this piece of metal, which is grounded to the frame of the car. I drilled a hole and secured the ground wire with a screw. I tucked the DC to DC adapter to the right and excess cable towards the windshield, as you can see there, to make room for the overhead console. I also passed the mini USB end of the cable down the windshield and secured the camera to the windshield. With the connectors and car battery plugged in, I'll reinstall the overhead console. The camera powers up successfully. I'll link to some of the items I used in the description below.